settle into the sleepy mind channel. Tonight we explore the strange science of sleep paralysis, one of the strangest experiences hidden inside ordinary human sleep. An experience so unusual that for thousands of years people believed it was caused by spirits, demons, ghosts, visitors from another world, or something supernatural standing quietly beside the bed in the darkness. Yet modern science eventually uncovered a very different explanation, one connected to dreaming, consciousness, memory, fear, and the strange hidden machinery of the sleeping brain itself. Few sleep experiences feel more convincing from the inside than sleep paralysis. People across cultures often describe waking suddenly in the middle of the night and realizing they cannot move. Their eyes may open. They may see the familiar outline of the room around them. They may hear distant sounds from outside the window or the quiet hum of a fan nearby. Yet despite feeling awake, the body refuses to respond. For a few seconds, or sometimes several minutes, they remain frozen between sleeping and waking, while the mind struggles to understand what is happening. For some people it feels deeply frightening because the brain naturally searches for explanations when something feels wrong. Human beings are not comfortable with uncertainty, especially in darkness. The mind wants a story. It wants a cause. Across history, entire cultures created myths and legends around this strange nighttime state because it feels far too vivid to ignore. Ancient stories spoke of shadow figures standing near the bed. Others described invisible pressure pressing down against the chest. Some believed spirits entered the room during the night, while the sleeper remained trapped and unable to escape. What makes sleep paralysis especially fascinating is that beneath all of the fear and mystery lies real biology. The experience does not happen because the mind is broken. It happens because parts of sleep and waking consciousness briefly overlap at the wrong time. In many ways, sleep paralysis reveals that the boundary between dreaming and waking is far less solid than most people imagine. The sleeping brain does not always switch cleanly from one state into another. Sometimes the systems overlap like two radio stations crossing signals for a brief moment before separating again. Tonight, we will explore the science of REM sleep, the strange logic of dreaming, ancient folklore, shadow figures, hallucinations, floating sensations, and the remarkable biological systems quietly operating inside the brain every night. We will look at how sleep researchers uncovered the hidden mechanics behind paralysis during dreaming and why it can feel so vivid and emotionally powerful. We will also explore why similar stories appear across countries, languages, and centuries, even among people separated by oceans and history. If you enjoy calm educational sleep stories like these, feel free to like and subscribe. The Sleepy Mind channel is filled with long, relaxing stories about science, history, nature, space, ancient worlds, and strange mysteries designed for overnight listening. You can also explore the playlists for many different topics if you would like something gentle playing throughout the night. Sleep paralysis often begins during one of the quietest moments imaginable. A person falls asleep normally, drifting gradually through the familiar stages of rest, while the body slows and the brain changes rhythm. Breathing becomes steadier, muscles relax, awareness fades softly into dreaming. Hours later, something unusual happens. Awareness begins returning before the body has fully left its dreaming state. The result can feel unsettling because the mind regains consciousness while the body still behaves as though it remains asleep. Many people describe the experience as feeling caught between two worlds at once. Part of the brain recognizes the bedroom and understands waking reality. Another part still carries fragments of the dream state. The combination creates an eerie blending of awareness where familiar surroundings suddenly feel strange and emotionally charged. Darkness appears heavier. Small sounds feel amplified. Shadows seem important. The ordinary room can feel transformed simply because the brain itself has not fully completed the transition into waking consciousness. Scientists now understand that sleep paralysis is closely connected to REM sleep, the stage most strongly associated with vivid dreaming. During REM sleep, the brain becomes surprisingly active while much of the body remains temporarily immobilized. This paralysis serves an important biological purpose because it helps prevent sleepers from physically acting out their dreams. Without it, sleeping people might move constantly during intense dream activity. The brain therefore keeps most skeletal muscles temporarily inhibited while dreams unfold safely inside the sleeping mind. Normally, the paralysis ends before awareness fully returns. In sleep paralysis, however, awareness arrives first while the body still remains partly locked in its REM condition. For a brief period, the sleeper experiences the strange contradiction of feeling mentally awake while physically unable to move. Even though the episode is usually harmless and temporary, the emotional intensity can feel overwhelming because the brain interprets immobility as danger. What makes the experience even stranger is how often people report similar sensations despite never speaking to one another beforehand. Across cultures and generations, many describe sensing a presence nearby during episodes. Some feel pressure on the chest. Others report hearing whispers, footsteps, or distant voices. A few describe floating sensations or the feeling of being pulled from the bed. Before neuroscience, these shared experiences strengthened supernatural interpretations because so many reports sounded eerily alike. Modern sleep research suggests many of these sensations may happen because dream imagery briefly spills into awareness. In other words, the dreaming brain has not fully shut down, even though consciousness has returned. Pieces of the dream world may still overlap with reality briefly. The result can produce vivid sensory experiences that feel astonishingly real, while the sleeper remains trapped between states of consciousness. To understand why sleep paralysis happens, it helps to understand one of the strangest facts about ordinary sleep itself. Every night, for several hours, the human brain deliberately disconnects most of the body's major muscles from conscious movement. This happens to nearly everyone during a stage of sleep called REM sleep, short for rapid eye movement sleep. Most people pass through this state multiple times every night without ever noticing it directly. Yet during those hours, the sleeping brain enters one of the most unusual conditions found anywhere in human biology. REM sleep is the stage most strongly connected with vivid dreaming. Brain scans reveal that during REM, certain parts of the brain become remarkably active. In some ways, the dreaming brain can appear nearly as active as the waking brain. Regions involved with visual imagery, emotion, memory, and imagination begin working intensely while the sleeper remains completely unaware of the outside world. The mind creates landscapes, conversations, emotions, stories, and experiences with astonishing realism while the body lies quietly motionless in bed. This combination once deeply confused early sleep researchers. Before modern brain scanning technology existed, many scientists assumed sleep must involve the brain becoming quiet and inactive. REM sleep challenged that idea completely. The brain during dreaming did not appear silent at all. In fact, certain areas became highly energized while the sleeper remained disconnected from waking reality. Researchers eventually began calling REM paradoxical sleep because it contained two seemingly contradictory conditions at the same time. The brain appeared awake in some ways, while the body remained deeply asleep. One of the most important parts of this system involves muscle inhibition. During REM sleep, the brain sends signals that greatly reduce activity in many skeletal muscles throughout the body. Arms remain still. Legs stop moving normally. Most voluntary muscle control becomes heavily restricted for the duration of the dream state. This temporary paralysis is known as REM atonia, and despite sounding alarming, it serves an essential protective purpose. If this protective system did not exist, dreaming could become physically dangerous very quickly. A person dreaming about running might begin kicking their legs against the bed. Someone dreaming about climbing could begin reaching outward or attempting to stand while still unconscious. Even ordinary dreams involving fear, falling, or sudden movement could produce real physical reactions during the night. The brain therefore uses muscle inhibition, almost like a safety barrier, separating the vivid internal world of dreams from the physical body resting outside the dream itself. A useful analogy might involve a cinema projector playing a dramatic action film while the audience remains seated safely in place. Inside the mind, dreams may contain movement, fear, urgency, excitement, or emotion, yet the body itself remains protected from physically responding to every imagined event. The sleeping brain creates an internal reality, while muscle inhibition keeps the external body calm and still. Most people never realize this system is operating because it functions automatically every night, without interruption. This protective system usually works with remarkable precision. The brain enters REM sleep, dreams become vivid, muscles remain inhibited, and then the cycle ends naturally before awareness fully returns. Sleep paralysis occurs when that timing briefly misaligns. Consciousness returns first, while the muscle inhibition from REM still lingers for a short period. The sleeper suddenly becomes aware of the bedroom around them, while the body still behaves partly as though it remains asleep. This creates one of the strangest contradictions in human experience. A person may feel mentally awake and aware of the room, while simultaneously remaining unable to move their arms, legs, or body normally. Because the brain naturally expects movement to follow intention, the inability to respond can trigger immediate alarm. The nervous system interprets immobility as something deeply wrong, even though the state itself is usually temporary and harmless. Breathing can feel unusual during these moments as well. During REM sleep, breathing patterns often become shallower and more irregular compared with ordinary waking breathing. Most sleepers never notice these changes because they remain unconscious throughout the process. During sleep paralysis, however, awareness suddenly returns, while the body still operates partly under REM conditions. The sleeper may become sharply aware of chest movement, breathing rhythm, or the sensation of lying motionless against the bed. Fear tends to magnify every sensation during an episode. A small sound from outside may suddenly feel important. The darkness inside the room may seem heavier than normal. the body's stillness becomes amplified because the brain is attempting to explain why movement is suddenly impossible. Many scientists believe this emotional amplification is one reason sleep paralysis feels so vivid and unforgettable compared with ordinary dreaming. The brain during these moments may also remain partly influenced by dream activity. REM sleep strongly activates emotional centers of the brain, particularly regions connected with fear, threat detection, and emotional memory. In waking life, the rational parts of the brain help evaluate danger calmly and logically. During REM overlap, however, emotional systems may remain unusually active, while logical evaluation struggles to fully stabilize. This may create a powerful feeling that something dangerous or supernatural is nearby, even when no threat exists. Scientists studying REM sleep uncovered many other strange features connected to this stage of sleep. The eyes move rapidly beneath closed eyelids, likely tracking dream imagery unfolding internally. Brain chemistry shifts dramatically compared with waking consciousness. Certain neurotransmitters linked to muscle movement become strongly suppressed while dreaming remains active. Memory processing also appears connected with REM sleep, though researchers continue studying exactly how these systems interact. Sleep paralysis may feel rare while it is happening, almost like something uniquely strange has interrupted the night, yet research suggests many people experience it at least once during life. Some people may have only a single episode and never encounter it again. Others experience it occasionally during stressful periods, irregular sleep schedules, or times when rest becomes broken and uneven. A smaller number report episodes more often, sometimes enough that the experience becomes familiar rather than completely shocking. This wide range helps explain why sleep paralysis has such a powerful place in human culture. A person who experiences it once may remember it for years because the moment feels so vivid and difficult to explain. Someone who experiences it repeatedly may begin noticing patterns around sleep loss, stress, or sleeping position. Across communities and generations, these personal experiences became stories, warnings, myths, and folklore passed from one person to another long before modern sleep science offered another explanation. One of the most striking things about sleep paralysis is how many similar reports appear in very different parts of the world. People separated by language, religion, geography, and history have described waking unable to move while sensing something nearby. Some describe pressure on the body. Others describe a figure near the bed or a presence that feels unseen but deeply real. These shared themes made the experience feel supernatural to many cultures because the stories seem to echo one another across enormous distances. Before neuroscience, people explained sleep paralysis using the ideas available to them. If someone woke in darkness, unable to move, and felt pressure on the chest, it made sense within many cultures to imagine a spirit sitting upon the sleeper. If someone sensed a presence near the bed, the mind connected that sensation with ghosts, demons, ancestors, witches, or night visitors. These explanations were not foolish. They were human attempts to make sense of an experience that feels impossible from the inside. A useful comparison might involve hearing an unexplained sound in an old house during the night. During daylight, the sound might seem ordinary, perhaps wood settling or pipes shifting in the walls. At night, when the body is tired and the room is dark, the same sound can feel mysterious and important. sleep paralysis works with far more intensity because the sleeper is not only hearing or sensing something unusual, they are also unable to move, and that immobility makes the mind search urgently for meaning. Many traditions describe sleep paralysis as a kind of night visitation. Some stories spoke of spirits pressing down on the sleeper. Others imagined creatures sitting on the chest, stealing breath, or trapping the body until morning. In certain regions, people described witch-like figures or shadowy beings appearing during the episode. In others, the same basic experience became linked with ghosts, demons, or unseen forces moving through the bedroom. The sensation of chest pressure played a major role in these beliefs. Many people report feeling as though something heavy is resting on them during an episode. From a scientific view, this may relate partly to REM breathing patterns, awareness of the body lying still, and fear increasing attention to the chest. From inside the experience, however, the sensation can feel external, as though some presence has entered the room and is physically holding the sleeper down. This is why sleep paralysis became so connected with folklore. It was not merely a strange dream. It happened in the bedroom, the most familiar and private place a person knew. The eyes might be open. The room might appear visible. The bed, window, door, ceiling, and shadows all seemed real. When dream sensations overlapped with awareness, the ordinary surroundings became part of the experience itself. Studies of sleep paralysis across different populations suggest that the basic biological event can appear in many people, though cultural interpretation changes how it is remembered and described. One person may say they felt a shadow figure. Another may say they sensed an evil presence. Someone else may describe it simply as waking before the body could move. The underlying state may be similar, but the story built around it depends heavily on belief, expectation, memory, and culture. A useful analogy might involve the same weather event being described differently by people living in different landscapes. A strong wind moving through desert sand, mountain trees, or city streets creates different sounds and meanings in each place. Sleep paralysis may begin with similar biology, yet culture shapes the details people attach to it. The brain supplies sensations, and the surrounding world supplies explanations. This cultural layer can make the experience more frightening or less frightening, depending on what a person believes is happening. Someone who has never heard a scientific explanation may interpret the immobility as danger, attack, or visitation. Someone who understands REM sleep and muscle inhibition may still feel unsettled, but the fear may soften because the event has a name and a mechanism. Knowledge does not always remove the strangeness, but it can reduce the panic. Long before laboratories, brain scans, and sleep clinics existed, human beings still experienced sleep paralysis in dark bedrooms beneath candlelight, moonlight, and silence. They woke unable to move, while strange sensations flooded the mind. They sensed pressure on the chest. They felt watched by something unseen. Some heard whispers or footsteps. Others believed a figure stood quietly beside the bed, staring down at them from the darkness. Without scientific explanations, many people concluded that something supernatural had entered the room during the night. These beliefs became deeply woven into folklore because sleep paralysis feels unusually real from the inside. Most ordinary dreams fade quickly after waking. Sleep paralysis often does not. The room itself appears visible, The sleeper may recognize familiar furniture, windows, walls, and shadows. Awareness feels close enough to waking reality that the experience carries unusual emotional weight. Even after the episode ends, many people remain unsettled because the memory feels less like a dream and more like something that truly happened. The word nightmare itself carries traces of these old beliefs. In ancient traditions, the mare was not originally a bad dream alone. It referred to a supernatural being believed to visit sleepers during the night, bringing fear, pressure, and terrifying sensations, while the victim remained trapped and unable to move. Over centuries, the meaning gradually shifted into the modern use of nightmare as a frightening dream, though the older connection reveals how strongly sleep paralysis shaped early ideas about nighttime terror. Across Europe, stories described witches, demons, or spirits pressing against the chest of sleeping people. In parts of Scandinavia, legends spoke of creatures sitting upon sleepers during the night. Other cultures imagined ghosts, ancestors, shadow beings, or invisible visitors entering the bedroom after dark. Although the names and details change from place to place, the core experience often sounded similar. A person wakes, the body will not move. Fear rises rapidly. Something unseen seems nearby. A useful analogy might involve looking at unfamiliar constellations before modern astronomy existed. People still saw the same stars, yet without scientific explanations, they created stories and mythologies to explain what they observed. Sleep paralysis worked similarly. Human beings experienced a powerful biological event and interpreted it through religion, folklore, fear, and imagination, because those were the frameworks available at the time. What makes sleep paralysis especially fascinating is how convincing it feels during the episode itself. The logical mind struggles to stabilize because the brain is still partly influenced by REM dream activity. Emotional systems remain active, while the body stays immobilized. This may create an overwhelming certainty that something dangerous is happening nearby, even when no threat exists. Darkness intensifies this effect. Human beings evolved to become cautious in darkness because vision weakens and uncertainty increases. The brain naturally becomes more alert to unusual sounds, movement, or possible danger at night. During sleep paralysis, this heightened vigilance combines with immobility and dream intrusion, creating conditions where fear can grow rapidly inside an otherwise ordinary room. The bedroom itself can begin to feel transformed during an episode. Familiar objects take on strange emotional significance. A coat hanging near a doorway may suddenly appear human-shaped. Shadows seem deeper and more threatening. Small sounds become amplified by fear and attention. The mind searches urgently for explanations while still partially connected to dreaming systems capable of generating vivid imagery and emotional intensity. Many people later describe the experience as feeling caught between reality and nightmare. That description may be closer to the truth than earlier generations realized. Sleep paralysis often represents a genuine overlap between awareness and REM dream mechanisms. The sleeper is neither fully awake nor fully dreaming. Instead, the brain exists briefly in an unstable borderland where elements of both states mix together. A useful comparison might involve waking suddenly inside a theater while a film still plays across the screen. Part of the mind recognizes reality, yet the emotional atmosphere of the film still lingers strongly. Sleep paralysis creates a similar blending where waking consciousness returns before dream systems have fully shut down. The emotional tone of dreaming remains active, while awareness of the room also returns. This overlap helps explain why some people report seeing figures during episodes. Scientists believe many of these experiences may result from dream imagery projecting briefly into awareness. The brain remains active in areas linked with visual imagination and emotional processing, while logical orientation struggles to fully regain control. The result can produce vivid impressions that feel external and real rather than imagined. Scientists studying sleep eventually realized that many old supernatural stories likely emerged from this biological overlap. Yet understanding the mechanism does not entirely erase the emotional power of the experience. A person may know intellectually that sleep paralysis is temporary and harmless, while still feeling profound fear during an episode. Biology explains the process, though the emotional intensity remains human. Artists throughout history often reflected these fears in paintings and literature. Dark figures leaning over sleepers became recurring symbols in visual art because the imagery captured something emotionally recognizable across cultures. Even people who never experienced sleep paralysis could understand the terror suggested by waking helpless in darkness while sensing a threatening presence nearby. By the middle of the 20th century, sleep researchers began uncovering something surprising about the sleeping brain. Earlier generations often imagined sleep as a quiet shutdown period where consciousness simply faded into darkness for several hours before returning in the morning. Scientific instruments gradually revealed a far stranger reality. The brain during sleep was not inactive at all. In some stages, it became extraordinarily active while the body remained almost still. One discovery changed the study of sleep forever. Researchers observing sleeping subjects noticed periods where the eyes moved rapidly beneath closed eyelids while brain activity suddenly increased. These episodes repeated throughout the night in organized cycles. The sleeper appeared deeply asleep from the outside, yet internally the brain showed intense patterns of activity connected with vivid dreaming. Scientists eventually named this state rapid eye movement sleep, or REM sleep. What made REM especially fascinating was the contradiction hidden inside it. Brain recordings during REM sometimes resembled waking patterns more closely than expected. Emotional regions, visual systems, and memory-related networks became active while the sleeper remained disconnected from the outside world. Yet despite this intense brain activity, the body itself stayed deeply immobilized through REM atonia. The brain seemed awake in some ways, while the body remained asleep in others. Researchers began calling REM paradoxical sleep because it combined conditions that appeared opposite to one another. The dreaming brain generated vivid experiences, emotion, movement, and imagination internally, while the physical body remained quiet and temporarily paralyzed. It was almost as though two different realities existed at the same time. Inside the dream, the sleeper might be running through cities, swimming across oceans, speaking with strangers, or flying above landscapes. Outside the dream, the body barely moved at all. A useful analogy might involve watching a powerful storm unfold inside a glass snow globe resting perfectly still upon a table. Inside the globe, movement and chaos swirl intensely, while the outer object remains calm and unmoving. REM sleep creates something similar inside the brain. Emotional and visual activity may become vivid, while the external body remains physically quiet. As researchers studied REM more closely, they realized sleep paralysis might reveal what happens when parts of this dream state spill into awareness before the transition fully completes. The sleeper regains consciousness, while remnants of REM activity continue operating briefly around the edges of awareness. Muscle inhibition remains active. Dream imagery may still linger. Emotional systems connected with fear and vigilance remain heightened. This creates the strange overlap people experience during sleep paralysis. This idea became known as dream intrusion. Rather than viewing sleep paralysis as a supernatural event, scientists began understanding it as a temporary blending of waking consciousness and REM mechanisms. The dream does not disappear instantly. Pieces of it may remain active while the sleeper becomes aware of the room around them. In many cases, the brain is attempting to exist in two different states at once for a brief period. That overlap helps explain why sleep paralysis often feels emotionally different from ordinary waking life. The rational mind begins returning, yet dream systems still influence perception and emotion. Fear may rise quickly because emotional centers of the brain remain unusually active. Visual impressions can feel vivid and convincing. Sensations become amplified because the sleeper is still partly immersed in the emotional atmosphere of REM sleep. Scientists became especially interested in what are called presence sensations. Many people experiencing sleep paralysis describe a powerful feeling that someone or something else is nearby in the room, even when no visible figure appears. The sensation can feel deeply convincing, almost like an instinctive certainty rather than a conscious thought. Some describe the feeling as more terrifying than actually seeing a figure because the mind senses presence without fully understanding it. A useful comparison might involve suddenly feeling watched while walking alone through a dark hallway. Even without seeing another person, the nervous system may become intensely alert to possible danger. During sleep paralysis, this instinctive vigilance can become amplified by REM overlap and emotional activation. The sleeper may feel convinced something is nearby because the brain's threat detection systems remain partially locked in dream patterns. Some researchers believe the brain naturally tries to explain paralysis by inventing an external cause. Human beings are strongly wired to search for explanations during threatening situations. If movement suddenly becomes impossible while fear rises rapidly, the brain may interpret the situation as caused by another presence nearby rather than an internal sleep state. Dream imagery can then shape that fear into shadow figures, silhouettes, or sensed beings standing close to the bed. The bedroom environment itself contributes to this effect. During sleep paralysis, the sleeper usually remains aware of the actual room around them. Darkness, shadows, furniture, doorways, and ceiling shapes all become mixed with lingering dream processes. The ordinary environment begins to feel emotionally altered because the brain is still partly functioning under REM conditions, where imagination and fear operate differently than during normal awareness. One of the reasons sleep paralysis feels so unforgettable is because many people experience far more than immobility alone. During some episodes, the mind produces vivid sensory experiences that seem real in the moment. People may hear footsteps moving across the floor, whispering voices near the bed, distant humming sounds, knocking, breathing, or the sensation that someone has entered the room. Others report seeing shadow figures standing nearby, dark silhouettes near the doorway, or movement in the corners of the bedroom that feels impossible to ignore. These experiences can sound unsettling when described afterward, yet modern sleep science offers an important explanation. During sleep paralysis, the brain may still remain partly connected to dream generation systems while awareness has already returned. Dream imagery and dream sensations briefly overlap with the real environment around the sleeper. In other words, pieces of dreaming may continue operating briefly, even while the sleeper feels awake. Scientists use the terms hypnagogic and hypnopompic hallucinations to describe these kinds of experiences. The words sound complicated, though the basic idea is actually simple. Hypnagogic experiences happen while falling asleep. Hypnopompic experiences happen while waking up. Sleep paralysis most often involves hypnopompic hallucinations because the sleeper is emerging out of REM sleep while dream imagery still lingers around awareness. The word hallucination can sound alarming because people often associate it with severe mental illness or complete disconnection from reality. Sleep-related hallucinations are very different. They occur because the dreaming brain is still partially active during a transition state between sleeping and waking. The brain is not broken, it is temporarily overlapping two different modes of consciousness at once. A useful comparison might involve a projector still casting faint images onto a screen after a film is ending, and the theater lights are beginning to turn back on. The room itself becomes visible again, yet traces of the film still remain briefly projected across the environment. During sleep paralysis, dream imagery may continue blending with awareness in a similar way. Shadow figures are among the most commonly reported experiences during episodes. Many people describe seeing dark, human-shaped forms standing near the bed, in the corner of the room, or close to the doorway. Interestingly, these figures often appear vague rather than highly detailed. The mind senses shape, presence, and threat without fully resolving clear features. Scientists believe this may happen because the brain's threat detection systems remain active while visual processing still carries dream-like qualities. Fear strongly shapes perception during these moments. Human beings naturally become hyper-alert when movement suddenly becomes impossible. The brain begins searching for danger immediately. Small visual ambiguities inside a dark room can suddenly appear meaningful or threatening once fear intensifies. Shadows, furniture, hanging clothes, or faint outlines may become amplified while dream imagery fills in missing details. This helps explain why many shadow figure reports feel strangely similar across cultures. The brain under fear and REM overlap may naturally produce comparable patterns of perception. The figure often appears human-shaped because the human brain is highly specialized for detecting other human forms, especially in uncertain visual conditions. Evolution favored nervous systems capable of quickly recognizing possible threats in darkness or partial visibility. A useful analogy might involve briefly mistaking a tree branch for a person while walking outside at night. Under ordinary conditions, the brain quickly corrects the mistake once visibility improves. During sleep paralysis, however, dream activity and fear interfere with that correction process. The emotional certainty remains stronger because parts of the brain still operate under REM conditions. Auditory experiences can feel equally convincing. Some people hear footsteps approaching the bed. Others describe buzzing sounds, low vibrations, whispering voices, or the sensation that someone is speaking nearby. In certain cases, sleepers report hearing doors open, objects move, or strange mechanical sounds filling the room. These experiences may arise because auditory dream systems remain partly active while awareness returns. Researchers studying REM sleep discovered that dreams can activate many of the same sensory regions involved in ordinary waking perception. During dreaming, the brain can create convincing sounds, voices, environments, and sensations internally without any external source. During sleep paralysis, fragments of these internally generated experiences may continue briefly into awareness. Touch sensations sometimes occur as well. Some people describe feeling pressure on the chest, movement across the bed, hands touching the body, or vibrations spreading through the room. Others experience floating sensations or the feeling of being pulled upward. These experiences may relate partly to disrupted body awareness as the brain attempts to reconnect normal sensory mapping during the transition out of REM sleep. The floating sensation appears especially interesting to researchers because it suggests the brain's body positioning systems may still operate partly within dream conditions during an episode. Under ordinary awareness, the brain constantly tracks body position through sensory input from muscles, joints, balance systems, and movement. During REM overlap, these systems may become temporarily unstable, creating unusual sensations involving movement, lifting, or drifting, despite the body remaining physically still. A useful comparison might involve hearing music blend briefly with outside sounds after removing headphones. For a moment, two different sensory worlds overlap before separating completely. Sleep paralysis creates a similar blending between dreaming and waking states, where internal imagery mixes with external awareness. The actual room remains present, but dream material briefly changes how the brain interprets sound, shape, and space. Among all the sensations reported during sleep paralysis, few feel more frightening than the sensation of pressure on the chest. Many people describe waking with the feeling that something heavy is sitting on them, pressing downward, or making it difficult to breathe normally. Some explain it as though a weight has settled across the body. Others describe the feeling more subtly, saying the chest simply feels tight, restricted, or unusually heavy during the episode. This sensation played a major role in the supernatural explanations surrounding sleep paralysis throughout history. Ancient stories about demons, spirits, witches, or night visitors often described creatures sitting upon the sleeper during the night. In many cultures, the experience of waking unable to move while feeling pressure on the chest seemed too specific and convincing to ignore. Long before neuroscience understood REM sleep, people naturally interpreted the sensation as the physical presence of something external. Modern sleep science offers a calmer explanation rooted in ordinary REM physiology. During REM sleep, breathing changes compared with normal waking breathing. Respiratory patterns become more irregular and often shallower, while the body remains deeply relaxed. Normally, the sleeper never notices these shifts because awareness remains fully inside the dream state. During sleep paralysis, however, consciousness returns while the body still operates, partly under REM conditions. This may create intense awareness of breathing itself. A person suddenly notices the chest rising and falling while movement remains restricted. The body feels unusually still against the mattress. Muscles remain deeply relaxed from REM atonia. Fear increases focus on every sensation connected with breathing and chest movement. The sleeper may begin taking slightly faster or more anxious breaths, which further increases awareness of tightness or pressure. The experience becomes amplified because the brain interprets unusual breathing sensations as possible danger. A useful analogy might involve suddenly becoming aware of your own heartbeat during a stressful moment. Under ordinary conditions, the heartbeat continues unnoticed in the background. Once attention locks onto it, however, the sensation can suddenly feel powerful, strange, or alarming, even though nothing dangerous is actually happening. Sleep paralysis creates a similar magnification of ordinary bodily sensations through fear and hyper-awareness. The body can also feel unusually heavy during episodes because REM atonia strongly reduces voluntary muscle activity. Most people rarely experience complete inability to move while conscious. During ordinary waking life, movement follows intention almost instantly. A person thinks about lifting an arm, and the arm responds automatically. Sleep paralysis interrupts that expected connection between intention and movement. The nervous system experiences a deeply unfamiliar mismatch between conscious awareness and physical response. Researchers studying sleep paralysis often describe several broad categories of experiences commonly reported during episodes. One category involves what scientists sometimes call the intruder experience. This includes sensing a threatening presence nearby, hearing footsteps, seeing shadow figures, or feeling watched by something unseen. Fear and hypervigilance dominate these episodes because the brain's threat detection systems remain active. Another category centers more heavily around chest pressure and breathing sensations. Researchers sometimes refer to this pattern as the incubus experience, borrowing from old folklore involving entities believed to sit upon sleepers during the night. During these episodes, the sleeper may feel crushing heaviness, breathing restriction, or pressure across the chest, combined with fear and immobility. It can feel physical and convincing, even though it emerges largely from REM overlap and heightened awareness of bodily sensation. A third category involves vestibular motor sensations connected with movement and body position. These episodes may include floating feelings, spinning sensations, drifting upward, or the strange impression of leaving the body entirely. Scientists believe these experiences may involve temporary instability in the brain systems responsible for tracking body orientation and movement during the transition out of REM sleep. A useful comparison might involve several different weather patterns emerging from the same atmospheric system. One storm may produce strong wind, while another brings heavy rain or lightning, yet all arise from related environmental conditions. Sleep paralysis works similarly. The underlying REM overlap remains the same, though the emotional and sensory details can vary from person to person. Fear amplifies nearly every aspect of the episode. Once panic begins rising, the brain becomes increasingly sensitive to threat-related information. Small sounds appear important. Shadows feel dangerous. Breathing sensations become magnified. The inability to move reinforces the emotional intensity because the body cannot respond normally to fear. Instead of escaping or sitting upright, the sleeper remains trapped inside stillness, while awareness and fear continue building together. Scientists believe the amygdala, one of the brain regions heavily involved with fear and threat detection, may remain unusually active during sleep paralysis because of lingering REM-related brain activity. The amygdala normally helps human beings respond quickly to possible danger. During REM overlap, however, this system may become over-engaged, while rational evaluation remains partially unstable. This may create overwhelming certainty that something threatening is present even when no real danger exists. One of the strangest parts of sleep paralysis is not always what people see or hear, but what they feel with absolute certainty. Many people describe an overwhelming sense that someone else is present in the room, even when they cannot see a clear figure. The feeling can seem immediate and undeniable, almost like an instinct rather than a thought. Some describe it as sensing another mind nearby. Others say it feels as though something is standing beside the bed, watching silently in the darkness. Researchers sometimes call this a sensed presence experience. What makes it especially fascinating is how similar the reports can sound across different countries and cultures. People separated by language, history, and belief systems often describe the same emotional certainty that something unseen is close to them during an episode. The details may change depending on culture, though the core sensation often remains familiar. This strange certainty may emerge because the human brain is highly specialized for detecting other living beings nearby. Throughout human evolution, quickly recognizing the possible presence of another person, predator, or threat helped survival. The brain therefore became extremely sensitive to signs of nearby presence, especially under uncertain conditions involving darkness, fear, or limited movement. During sleep paralysis, these systems may become unusually active while dream activity still overlaps with awareness. Fear rises rapidly. The body remains immobilized. The bedroom feels emotionally altered. Under those conditions, the brain may begin interpreting uncertainty itself as evidence that something else is present nearby. A useful analogy might involve walking alone through a dark forest at night. A small sound behind you may suddenly feel loaded with meaning, even before you consciously identify what caused it. The nervous system prepares for possible danger first and asks questions later. Sleep paralysis appears to trigger similar survival systems, while the sleeper remains trapped between REM dreaming and awareness. Scientists believe the sensed presence may partly result from the brain attempting to explain its own unusual condition. Human beings naturally search for causes during moments of fear or confusion. If awareness returns, while movement remains impossible, the mind may instinctively create an external explanation for the experience. The sensation of another presence becomes convincing because threat detection systems remain strongly activated. Interestingly, many reports describe the presence as emotionally negative or threatening, even when no clear figure appears. This likely reflects the emotional state of the brain during REM overlap. Fear and vigilance become amplified, while logical evaluation struggles to fully stabilize. The sleeper therefore experiences not only immobility, but also a powerful emotional atmosphere suggesting danger nearby. Floating sensations can also occur during episodes and may feel equally convincing. Some people describe drifting upward toward the ceiling, while others feel as though the bed itself is moving beneath them. A few report spinning sensations, falling feelings, or the strange impression that the body has separated from the mattress entirely, despite remaining physically motionless. These experiences fascinated scientists because they suggest sleep paralysis may briefly disrupt the brain's normal body mapping systems. Under ordinary waking conditions, the brain constantly tracks body position using signals from muscles, joints, balance organs inside the inner ear, and sensory feedback from movement. During REM overlap, however, parts of this positioning system may still operate partly within dream conditions. A useful comparison might involve the sensation of movement that sometimes lingers briefly after stepping off a boat or spinning ride. Even once standing still, the brain may continue carrying traces of motion afterward. Sleep paralysis may create something similar through dream movement systems overlapping with waking body awareness. Dreams themselves often involve movement without physical action. A person may dream about flying, falling, running, swimming, or drifting through unfamiliar places while the body remains still in bed. During sleep paralysis, fragments of these movement sensations may continue briefly into awareness because REM systems have not fully shut down yet. Some researchers believe floating sensations and present sensations may arise from the brain attempting to reconcile conflicting information at the same time. Consciousness recognizes the bedroom and waking reality, while dream systems still generate emotional and sensory impressions. The brain struggles to organize these mixed signals into a coherent experience, producing sensations that feel strange and difficult to describe afterward. Across history, these sensations helped shape supernatural interpretations of sleep paralysis. Floating feelings became linked with spirits, astral projection, or out-of-body experiences in certain traditions. Present sensations became connected with demons, ghosts, ancestors, or unseen visitors. The emotional certainty of the experience made these interpretations feel believable because the sensations themselves seemed too vivid to dismiss. A useful analogy might involve hearing fragments of two different conversations overlapping through a wall at the same time. The mind tries to organize the information into something meaningful, even though the signals conflict with one another. Sleep paralysis creates a similar overlap between awareness and dream systems, causing the brain to blend multiple layers of experience together. Among the most unusual experiences reported during sleep paralysis are sensations involving movement, lifting, or physical contact, even though the body remains still in bed. Some people describe feeling themselves rise slowly upward toward the ceiling. Others feel as though they are drifting sideways, floating above the mattress, or being pulled through darkness by an unseen force. A few report the strange impression that they have separated entirely from their physical body and are observing the room from another position nearby. These experiences can feel astonishingly real during an episode because the brain systems responsible for body awareness remain connected to dreaming during REM sleep. Under ordinary waking conditions, the brain constantly combines signals from muscles, balance organs, touch receptors, vision, and movement to create a stable sense of physical position. During sleep paralysis, however, parts of that system may still operate partly inside dream conditions while awareness begins returning. Dreams themselves often contain intense movement without physical action. A person may dream about falling from a great height, flying through open skies, swimming beneath dark water, or floating weightlessly above landscapes while the body remains perfectly motionless in bed. Normally, these sensations disappear once waking consciousness fully stabilizes. During sleep paralysis, fragments of dream movement may continue briefly into awareness, producing sensations of levitation, drifting, or separation from the body. A useful analogy might involve stepping off a moving walkway at an airport and still feeling faint forward motion afterward. The body has stopped moving, yet the nervous system temporarily continues carrying traces of motion internally. Sleep paralysis appears to create something similar through overlap between REM dream movement and awareness. Touch sensations can occur as well. Some people describe feeling hands pressing against the body, movement across the mattress, vibrations in the room, or sudden contact along the arms, chest, or legs. Others report the feeling of being grabbed, held down, or pulled from the bed. These sensations often become intense because they occur while voluntary movement remains impossible. Scientists believe many of these experiences emerge from the brain attempting to organize conflicting sensory information during the transition out of REM sleep. Conscious awareness recognizes the bedroom and physical stillness, while dream systems continue generating movement, pressure, and emotional imagery. The brain tries to combine these mixed signals into a coherent explanation, sometimes producing highly convincing physical sensations despite no external contact occurring. Fear and expectation strongly influence how these sensations are interpreted. Throughout history, people often explained sleep paralysis through the cultural ideas available to them. In earlier centuries, floating sensations or nighttime pressure became linked with spirits, demons, witches, or supernatural visitors. In more recent decades, some people interpreted similar experiences through ideas involving alien abduction or paranormal encounters. Although the cultural language changed, the underlying biological event may have remained similar. This shift in interpretation reveals something important about the human mind. People naturally explain strange experiences using the symbols and beliefs already present within their culture. A person living centuries ago might interpret a shadow figure as a demon or spirit. A modern person exposed to science fiction and alien imagery may interpret a similar experience differently. The emotional certainty feels real either way, because the sensations themselves emerge from powerful brain systems connected with fear, dreaming, and body awareness. A useful comparison might involve people throughout history interpreting eclipses differently before astronomy fully explained them. The event itself remained the same, while human explanations changed according to culture and available knowledge. Sleep paralysis appears to function similarly. The biological overlap between REM sleep and awareness remains constant, while the stories built around it evolve across time. Researchers studying body awareness became especially interested in out-of-body sensations connected with sleep paralysis. Certain experiments suggested that disrupting normal sensory integration inside the brain could produce feelings of floating, separation, or altered body position even during waking conditions. This supported the idea that sleep paralysis may temporarily destabilize the brain's ordinary body mapping systems while REM dream processes still linger. The temporoparietal junction, a brain region involved with integrating sensory information and body awareness, became particularly important in these studies. Scientists found that unusual activity in this region could sometimes create altered perceptions of physical position or presence. During sleep paralysis, overlapping REM activity may briefly interfere with the brain's stable sense of where the body exists in space. This helps explain why some episodes feel so physically convincing. The sleeper is not merely imagining movement intellectually. The brain systems responsible for constructing bodily experience may actually be generating distorted sensations internally while awareness returns. The result can feel real and immediate because the same neural systems involved in ordinary body perception remain active during the experience. One of the most important discoveries in sleep research is that sleep paralysis tends to appear more often when normal sleep patterns become disrupted. Although episodes can happen to almost anyone under the right conditions, researchers noticed that certain habits and circumstances increase the likelihood of the brain entering these strange overlap states between REM sleep and awareness. Irregular sleep schedules, sleep deprivation, emotional stress, fragmented sleep, and sudden changes in routine all appear strongly connected with episodes in many people. This connection helped scientists understand that sleep paralysis is not random. The experience often emerges when the brain's organized sleep cycles become unstable or interrupted. Under ordinary conditions, the brain moves gradually through repeating stages of sleep in a highly coordinated rhythm across the night. REM sleep appears in cycles, muscle inhibition activates and fades normally, and waking consciousness returns smoothly by morning. When sleep becomes disrupted, however, these transitions may lose some of their usual stability. Many people report episodes during periods of exhaustion. University students studying late into the night, shift workers sleeping at unusual hours, parents caring for newborn children, travelers crossing time zones, or individuals experiencing chronic stress often describe disrupted sleep patterns before episodes occur. The brain under sleep deprivation behaves differently because normal REM timing and recovery cycles become strained. A useful analogy might involve an orchestra trying to perform while sections of the musicians arrive late or fall out of rhythm. Under ordinary conditions, the performance flows smoothly because every section follows organized timing. When timing becomes irregular, moments of confusion and overlap appear more easily. Sleep paralysis seems to emerge through something similar within the sleeping brain when REM transitions become poorly synchronized. Researchers believe REM rebound may also play an important role. When people lose sleep, especially REM sleep, the brain often attempts to recover that lost REM more intensely during later sleep periods. REM cycles may begin earlier, become more vivid, or appear more suddenly. This increased REM pressure may raise the likelihood that awareness and REM paralysis briefly overlap during transitions. The experience itself often carries a powerful feeling of being caught between two states at once. Many people describe sleep paralysis as neither fully dreaming nor fully awake. The room appears visible, yet emotionally distorted. Thoughts feel partly logical, yet dream imagery still lingers around awareness. The body remains frozen while the mind struggles to fully stabilize. This unstable in-between condition may be one reason it feels so uniquely strange compared with ordinary dreams or waking consciousness. Sleeping position also appears connected with episodes in many reports. Researchers noticed that sleep paralysis often occurs while lying on the back, though episodes can happen in other positions as well. Scientists are still studying exactly why this pattern appears so frequently, though several theories exist. Lying on the back may influence breathing awareness, airway sensation, or certain aspects of REM physiology in ways that make episodes more likely or more memorable. The connection between sleep position and fear may also contribute psychologically. When lying flat on the back during an episode, chest pressure sensations and awareness of breathing can become especially noticeable. The sleeper may feel more physically exposed or vulnerable while unable to move. Small changes in bodily sensation can then become amplified by fear and REM overlap. A useful comparison might involve waking suddenly in an unfamiliar hotel room after poor sleep. For a brief moment, orientation feels unstable while the mind struggles to fully recognize the environment. Sleep paralysis creates a far more intense version of this instability because dream systems, fear responses, and muscle inhibition remain active at the same time. Stress appears strongly connected with episodes as well. Emotional stress affects sleep architecture in many ways. People under stress often experience lighter sleep, more nighttime awakenings, irregular REM timing, and increased emotional intensity during dreams. The brain remains more vigilant, even during rest. This instability may create more opportunities for awareness to emerge before REM systems fully shut down. Scientists studying sleep architecture describe sleep as an organized neurological pattern composed of repeating stages cycling throughout the night. Light sleep, deep sleep, REM sleep, hormonal regulation, memory processing, and emotional recovery all operate together through coordinated timing systems. Sleep paralysis may occur when transitions between these stages become temporarily unstable rather than smoothly separated. Interestingly, many people experience only a few episodes during life, while others become more prone to recurring events. Researchers believe individual differences in sleep patterns, stress response, genetics, and REM regulation may partly explain why some people experience sleep paralysis more frequently than others. The brain's transition systems may simply vary somewhat between individuals. Despite how frightening episodes can feel, sleep paralysis itself is generally considered harmless. The paralysis ends naturally once waking systems fully stabilize and REM inhibition fades. Breathing continues normally, even when it feels unusual or amplified during the episode. Understanding this often helps reduce fear because the experience becomes easier to place within normal sleep biology rather than danger or supernatural threat. As scientists continued studying sleep paralysis, one pattern appeared again and again in research reports, university studies, and sleep clinics around the world. Episodes often increase during periods of stress. Students preparing for major examinations, medical workers working overnight shifts, military personnel under pressure, parents caring for young children, and people struggling through emotionally difficult periods frequently reported disrupted sleep, followed by episodes of paralysis during the night. This connection fascinated researchers because stress influences nearly every part of sleep architecture. Under calm conditions, the brain usually cycles through sleep stages with relatively stable rhythm and timing. During stressful periods, however, sleep often becomes fragmented and emotionally charged. People may fall asleep later, wake more often, sleep less deeply, or spend more time mentally alert even while resting. Dreams themselves can become more vivid or intense. Sleep deprivation appears especially important in many studies involving students and shift workers. During periods of heavy workload, people often delay sleep repeatedly while trying to remain productive. The body grows increasingly exhausted, while REM pressure gradually builds beneath the surface. When sleep finally occurs, REM cycles may become more intense and unstable because the brain attempts to recover lost restorative sleep. A useful analogy might involve stretching a rubber band farther and farther under tension. Eventually, the stored tension releases abruptly once the pressure becomes too great. Sleep systems behave somewhat similarly. The brain can tolerate disrupted schedules for a period of time, though eventually normal sleep architecture begins struggling to maintain stable transitions between waking and REM sleep. University students became one of the most commonly studied groups because their sleep schedules often shift dramatically during examinations and stressful academic periods. Researchers found that episodes of sleep paralysis frequently appeared alongside irregular sleep timing, reduced sleep duration, emotional stress, and anxiety. Students staying awake late into the night before collapsing into exhausted sleep sometimes reported waking during episodes where dream imagery and paralysis overlapped intensely. The emotional state of the brain during stress may contribute heavily to the frightening nature of sleep paralysis. REM sleep plays an important role in emotional processing and memory regulation. Scientists believe the dreaming brain helps process emotional experiences, organize memories, and regulate stress-related neural activity during sleep. When emotional strain increases, REM activity itself may become more intense or unstable. This helps explain why episodes during stressful periods often feel especially vivid. Fear systems remain more sensitive. Emotional centers of the brain stay active. The sleeper enters REM overlap, while already carrying elevated tension and vigilance from waking life. Small sensations become amplified, while the nervous system searches aggressively for possible danger. A useful comparison might involve walking through a quiet house at night after watching an intense horror film. Ordinary sounds suddenly feel loaded with meaning because the brain remains emotionally primed for threat detection. Stress may create something similar during sleep paralysis by heightening emotional sensitivity before the episode even begins. Scientists studying REM sleep became increasingly interested in sleep paralysis because it offered a rare opportunity to observe overlapping consciousness states directly. Most people move between sleeping and waking without awareness of the transition itself. Sleep paralysis briefly exposes the boundary between these states, while the sleeper remains conscious enough to describe the experience afterward. This made sleep paralysis valuable to neuroscientists interested in consciousness. Researchers began asking deeper questions about how the brain constructs awareness, body perception, reality testing, and emotional experience during changing neurological states. Sleep paralysis revealed that consciousness is not a simple switch turning on and off cleanly. Instead, awareness may emerge gradually through interacting brain systems recovering at different speeds. Researchers also became interested in why some people remain calm during episodes while others experience overwhelming terror. Personality, stress levels, previous knowledge about sleep paralysis, and emotional regulation may all influence how the brain interprets the event. Someone familiar with REM overlap may recognize the episode and wait calmly for movement to return. Someone unfamiliar with the experience may interpret the same sensations as immediate danger or supernatural attack. The role of emotional regulation became especially important in modern sleep research. REM sleep appears connected with how the brain processes emotional memories and stressful experiences. During REM, emotional centers remain active, while certain rational control systems behave differently than during waking consciousness. Sleep paralysis may therefore involve a temporary state where emotional intensity remains elevated while logical stabilization has not fully returned yet. A useful analogy might involve waking suddenly from an intense dream while the feelings still linger powerfully afterward. Even after recognizing reality, the emotional atmosphere of the dream may continue influencing the mind briefly. Sleep paralysis appears to magnify this overlap dramatically, because paralysis and dream intrusion remain active at the same time. The deeper scientists explored sleep and consciousness, the more astonishing the human brain began to appear. Inside the average human brain are roughly 86 billion neurons, each connected through immense networks constantly exchanging electrical and chemical signals. Even during quiet sleep, these networks never truly shut down. Instead, they reorganize continuously through changing stages of awareness, memory processing, emotional regulation, dreaming, and sensory filtering, unfolding hour after hour throughout the night. For centuries, sleep seemed simple from the outside. A person closed their eyes, became still, and later woke again in the morning. Modern neuroscience revealed something far more complicated hidden beneath that calm surface. Sleep is not a single condition, but a shifting architecture of neurological states moving in organized cycles. Different brain regions increase or decrease activity according to changing stages, while hormones, neurotransmitters, memory systems, and emotional networks coordinate together with extraordinary precision. A useful analogy might involve a vast city continuing to operate through the night, even after most lights appear dark from a distance. Transportation systems still function. Maintenance crews continue working underground. Electrical networks remain active. Communication signals move constantly beneath the surface. The sleeping brain behaves similarly. Although consciousness changes during sleep, enormous amounts of coordinated neurological activity continue operating quietly throughout the night. REM sleep became especially fascinating because it revealed how active the sleeping brain could become while the body remained physically still. During REM, visual regions become highly engaged, while emotional systems intensify dramatically. Memory-related areas participate in dream construction, while neurotransmitter balances shift into unusual configurations, different from waking consciousness. At the same time, REM atonia prevents most skeletal muscles from moving normally. Sleep paralysis briefly exposes what happens when some of these systems fall out of sync during transitions between REM and awareness. Consciousness begins returning, while dream activity still remains active around the edges of awareness. The sleeper becomes aware of the room, while paralysis, emotional activation, and fragments of dream processing continue lingering within the nervous system. Scientists studying brain imaging during REM sleep notice that certain rational control systems behave differently compared with normal waking consciousness. Emotional and visual regions often become strongly activated, while parts of the brain involved with critical evaluation and logical filtering may become less dominant. This helps explain why dream experiences can feel convincing, even when they contain impossible events or distorted realities. During sleep paralysis, awareness begins recovering while emotional systems may still operate partly within REM conditions. This creates a strange mental state where fear, imagery, bodily sensation, and environmental awareness overlap in unstable ways. The sleeper may intellectually recognize the bedroom while emotionally feeling trapped inside something far more threatening. Researchers increasingly view sleep as one of the most active and important biological processes in human life, rather than passive unconscious rest. During sleep, memories become reorganized, emotional experiences are processed, cellular repair continues, hormones shift, immune systems regulate themselves, and dream activity unfolds through massive patterns of coordinated brain activity. The sleeping brain remains deeply alive with internal movement and communication. The more researchers learned about sleep architecture, the more they recognized how delicate these transitions truly are. Consciousness depends upon immense coordination between countless brain networks operating together in precise timing. Small disruptions during transitions between REM sleep and waking can temporarily create experiences involving paralysis, dream imagery, altered body sensation, emotional amplification, and sensed presence all at once. A useful analogy might involve an enormous symphony orchestra where thousands of instruments must enter and leave at exactly the correct moments to maintain harmony. Most nights, the performance unfolds smoothly and invisibly. Occasionally, however, one section overlaps slightly with another before the transition fully completes. Sleep paralysis may emerge from a similar overlap inside the neurological orchestra of the sleeping brain. One of the most interesting discoveries about sleep paralysis is that fear often changes once people understand what is happening to them. The experience may still feel strange and intense, yet knowledge can transform the meaning of the episode completely. A person who believes something supernatural or dangerous has entered the room may experience overwhelming panic. Someone who recognizes the signs of REM overlap and muscle inhibition may still feel unsettled, though the fear often softens because the event becomes understandable rather than mysterious. This does not mean sleep paralysis suddenly becomes pleasant. Waking unable to move while dream sensations linger around awareness can still feel deeply unnatural. Yet many people report that learning the science behind the experience reduces the panic significantly. Instead of struggling violently against the paralysis, some learn to remain still, regulate breathing, and wait calmly while the episode passes naturally. Researchers notice that emotional reaction plays a powerful role in shaping the intensity of episodes. Fear amplifies bodily sensation, attention, and threat detection. The more terrified the sleeper becomes, the more emotionally vivid the experience may feel. Small sounds seem larger, shadows appear darker, present sensations feel more convincing. Remaining calmer may help interrupt this escalating cycle before panic fully takes control. A useful analogy might involve turbulence during a flight. A passenger who believes the aircraft is failing may panic intensely during rough air. Someone who understands turbulence as a normal atmospheric condition may still feel uncomfortable, though the experience becomes easier to tolerate because it has context and explanation. Sleep paralysis often changes in a similar way once the sleeper understands the biology behind it. Some people eventually become so familiar with sleep paralysis that they recognize episodes almost immediately. They notice the inability to move, the unusual body heaviness, or the lingering dream sensations, and realize what is happening before fear fully rises. This awareness sometimes allows them to remain surprisingly calm while waiting for movement to return naturally. Researchers studying lucid dreaming became especially interested in this possibility. Lucid dreaming occurs when a person becomes aware they are dreaming while still remaining inside the dream itself. During lucid dreams, some people can partially influence the direction of the dream or observe it consciously, while understanding that the experience is internally generated by the sleeping brain. Sleep paralysis appears closely connected to these threshold states between dreaming and awareness. In both conditions, consciousness becomes aware of processes normally hidden inside sleep. Lucid dreamers sometimes report entering dreams directly from sleep paralysis by relaxing rather than resisting the episode. Instead of fighting the paralysis, they allow awareness to drift back into dreaming consciously. This connection fascinated neuroscientists because it suggested consciousness itself may exist along a spectrum rather than inside sharply separated categories. Human awareness can become partially awake, partially dreaming, emotionally active, physically immobilized, or consciously aware of dream generation under certain conditions. Sleep paralysis briefly reveals how flexible these states can become. A useful comparison might involve standing at the shoreline where land and ocean meet. The boundary exists, though waves continuously blur the exact line between water and sand. Sleep and waking consciousness appear to function similarly. Most of the time, the boundary feels stable and clear. During experiences like sleep paralysis or lucid dreaming, however, the border briefly becomes fluid and overlapping. Some people discover techniques that help reduce fear during episodes. Focusing calmly on breathing often helps because breathing continues normally, even when it feels unusual or amplified. Others concentrate on making very small movements, such as wiggling fingers or toes, until voluntary control gradually returns. Certain people find comfort simply reminding themselves that the episode is temporary and connected to REM sleep rather than danger. Interestingly, trying to forcefully escape the paralysis sometimes increases panic instead of helping. The harder the sleeper struggles emotionally, the more threatening the experience may begin to feel. Remaining calmer often allows the transition back into full awareness to happen more smoothly because fear systems stop amplifying the episode so intensely. Scientists also noticed that people who approach sleep paralysis with curiosity rather than terror often describe episodes differently afterward. Instead of focusing entirely on fear, they become fascinated by the strange overlap between dreaming and awareness. The experience can shift from supernatural threat into a rare glimpse of the brain's hidden transition systems. This shift from fear toward curiosity reflects a broader pattern in science itself. Many phenomena once interpreted as supernatural eventually became understood through observation, research, and biological explanation. Sleep paralysis followed a similar path. What once inspired stories of demons, spirits, or night visitors now reveals the extraordinary flexibility of human consciousness during REM transitions. A useful analogy might involve understanding how roller coasters work while still feeling the drop physically inside the body. Knowledge changes interpretation, though the nervous system continues responding emotionally in the moment. Sleep paralysis behaves similarly. Scientific explanation may reduce panic, while the brain still reacts strongly to immobility and dream overlap during the episode itself. As sleep researchers continued studying sleep paralysis, many became fascinated by a deeper question hidden beneath the fear itself. Why does the human brain create such convincing experiences during these episodes? Why do shadow figures, present sensations, and terrifying certainty appear so naturally once awareness overlaps with REM sleep? The answer seems connected not only to dreaming, but also to how the human brain searches constantly for meaning, patterns, and possible threats in uncertain situations. Human beings are extraordinary pattern recognition machines. The brain evolved to interpret incomplete information quickly because survival often depended upon rapid decisions. A rustling sound in darkness might signal wind, though it could also signal danger. A vague shape at the edge of vision might be harmless, though ignoring a real threat could carry serious consequences. Over time, evolution favored nervous systems that reacted rapidly to possible danger, even when information remained uncertain. During ordinary waking life, logical reasoning and sensory stability help balance these instincts. Sleep paralysis disrupts that balance temporarily. The sleeper becomes conscious, while dream imagery, emotional activation, and REM paralysis still remain active. Fear rises quickly because movement becomes impossible. Under those conditions, the brain begins searching urgently for explanations while operating with incomplete and unstable information. A useful analogy might involve looking at clouds and instinctively recognizing shapes inside them. The human brain naturally organizes uncertainty into familiar patterns because pattern recognition is deeply built into consciousness itself. During sleep paralysis, however, fear and REM overlap intensify this process dramatically, causing shadows, sounds, and bodily sensations to feel emotionally charged and meaningful. This helps explain why shadow figures appear so often during episodes. The brain under fear becomes hypersensitive to human-shaped outlines, because recognizing other human beings quickly has always been important for survival. In uncertain lighting conditions, vague shapes may suddenly appear threatening once emotional systems become activated. Dream imagery can then merge with ordinary visual ambiguity, producing the overwhelming certainty that someone is standing nearby. Scientists believe the brain may also create external explanations because the paralysis itself feels fundamentally wrong to waking consciousness. Human beings expect movement to follow intention almost instantly. During sleep paralysis, intention remains active while movement fails completely. The brain therefore searches urgently for a cause outside itself. A threatening presence, intruder, or figure may emerge because the mind attempts to explain why the body suddenly feels trapped and vulnerable. A useful comparison might involve hearing a sudden unexplained noise in the middle of the night. The brain immediately begins imagining possible causes before full information becomes available. Sleep paralysis magnifies this instinct because the sleeper cannot move while emotional systems remain active. The mind fills uncertainty with emotionally meaningful explanations, shaped partly by fear and partly by lingering dream activity. This combination of fear, imagination, and uncertainty makes sleep paralysis unusually unforgettable. Most ordinary dreams fade rapidly because waking consciousness stabilizes completely once the sleeper awakens. Sleep paralysis often feels different because awareness returns while emotional intensity remains unusually high. The brain records the experience almost like a real threatening event rather than a fading dream fragment. Researchers studying memory notice that emotionally charged experiences tend to remain vivid longer than neutral ones. Fear increases attention and strengthens emotional encoding within memory systems. During sleep paralysis, the mixture of immobility, fear, dream imagery, and heightened awareness creates conditions where the brain treats the episode as highly important. Even brief episodes may therefore remain sharply remembered for years afterward. The impossibility of the experience also contributes to its emotional impact. Human beings rarely encounter situations where consciousness returns while the body remains temporarily disconnected from voluntary movement. The state violates ordinary assumptions about waking reality. A person opens their eyes, recognizes the room, attempts to move, and suddenly discovers the body refusing to respond. That contradiction alone can feel profoundly disturbing. A useful analogy might involve suddenly pressing the brakes in a car and feeling nothing happen for a moment. Even a brief interruption between intention and response would feel shocking, because the nervous system expects certain actions to work automatically. Sleep paralysis creates a similar mismatch between conscious intention and physical response, though within the deeply vulnerable environment of nighttime sleep. As neuroscience developed, researchers began recognizing that many so-called monsters of sleep paralysis may emerge from ordinary brain systems operating under extraordinary conditions. Threat detection, body awareness, dream imagery, emotional amplification, and pattern recognition all combine during unstable REM transitions. The resulting experiences feel supernatural not because they come from outside the brain, but because the brain itself is capable of generating remarkably convincing realities under certain conditions. Scientists became increasingly fascinated by what sleep paralysis revealed about the construction of reality itself. Human perception does not simply record the outside world passively. The brain actively builds experience from sensory information, memory, emotion, expectation, and interpretation. During sleep paralysis, those construction systems become temporarily unstable, exposing how much ordinary reality depends upon delicate neurological coordination happening continuously beneath awareness. Long before modern neuroscience explained sleep paralysis through REM overlap and dream intrusion, artists were already trying to capture the emotional intensity of the experience through paintings, literature, and visual symbolism. Across centuries, strange nighttime figures appeared repeatedly in artwork connected with fear, helplessness, darkness, and disturbed sleep. Even without scientific understanding, many artists seem to recognize that certain nighttime terrors shared common emotional patterns powerful enough to appear again and again throughout human culture. One of the most famous examples is a painting known simply as The Nightmare by the Swiss artist Henri Fuseli. Painted during the year 1781, the image became one of the most recognizable artistic representations of sleep-related terror in history. The painting shows a woman lying motionless across a bed, while a dark creature sits heavily upon her chest. Behind the bed curtains, a horse with wide staring eyes emerges from darkness, adding to the unsettling atmosphere of the scene. The image fascinated people partly because it captured sensations many recognized emotionally, even if they could not fully explain them. The helpless body, the oppressive presence, the nighttime setting, and the feeling of invasion during sleep all reflected experiences strongly associated with sleep paralysis folklore. The creature pressing upon the sleeper resembled older beliefs about night demons, spirits, or entities visiting sleepers, while they remain trapped and unable to move. What makes the painting especially interesting today is how closely it mirrors modern descriptions of sleep paralysis, despite being created long before REM sleep was scientifically understood. The chest pressure sensation, the threatening presence, the vulnerability of lying motionless in bed, and the dreamlike distortion of the room all resemble reports still described by people experiencing episodes in modern times. It shows how accurately art can preserve an experience before science has the language to explain it. A useful analogy might involve ancient maps that captured coastlines surprisingly accurately, despite lacking modern satellites or technology. Artists and storytellers throughout history observed emotional truths about sleep paralysis long before neuroscience explained the biological mechanisms behind them. Their interpretations were shaped through symbolism and mythology rather than laboratory science, yet many details remained remarkably recognizable. Artists were naturally drawn towards sleep paralysis because the experience touches some of the deepest emotional themes in human life. Fear of helplessness, invasion during sleep, darkness, vulnerability, and uncertainty all appear strongly during episodes. The ordinary bedroom transforms into a place where reality itself feels unstable. That emotional atmosphere provides powerful material for visual art and storytelling. Across Europe, paintings and stories often depicted demons, witches, or shadowy creatures leaning over sleeping people during the night. In some traditions, artists emphasized chest pressure and suffocation. Others focus more heavily on dark figures watching from corners of the room. Certain works portrayed floating sensations, distorted rooms, or dreamlike states blending reality with nightmare imagery. Different cultures created different visual symbols around these experiences, though similar themes continued appearing repeatedly. In some regions, nighttime spirits became central figures in folklore art. Elsewhere, artists represented the fear more abstractly through darkness, looming shapes, distorted perspective, or helpless sleeping figures surrounded by uncertainty. A useful comparison might involve thunderstorms inspiring similar myths across distant civilizations. Different cultures imagined different gods or spirits controlling storms, though the emotional experience of thunder, darkness, and overwhelming natural force remained universally recognizable. Sleep paralysis inspired similar artistic responses because the emotional experience itself feels human regardless of culture. Literature also became filled with imagery connected to sleep paralysis long before the condition carried its modern scientific name. Stories described waking terror, unseen visitors, oppressive dreams, and nighttime paralysis as symbols of fear, guilt, madness, or supernatural attack. Writers often blurred the line between dreaming and waking reality because sleep paralysis itself naturally occupies that uncertain borderland. The emotional realism of these experiences made them especially powerful artistic subjects. Unlike ordinary dreams, sleep paralysis often feels physically connected to the real bedroom environment. The sleeper may recognize familiar surroundings while simultaneously experiencing fear, paralysis, and dream intrusion. Artists could therefore portray ordinary rooms transformed into spaces of psychological uncertainty and nighttime dread. Scientists studying the history of folklore later noticed how many artistic representations aligned closely with modern neurological explanations. The figures often appeared near the bed because the sleeper remained partly aware of the real room. Chest pressure became central because REM breathing sensations felt amplified during paralysis. Shadowy forms appeared repeatedly because the brain under fear naturally interprets uncertain visual information as possible human presence. A useful analogy might involve early painters accurately depicting certain medical symptoms before medicine fully understood the diseases involved. Observation often captures reality long before explanation catches up. Art surrounding sleep paralysis reflected emotional and sensory truths about the experience centuries before neuroscience identified REM, atonia, and dream intrusion. The nightmare painting remained especially influential because it condensed many of these themes into one unforgettable image. The helpless sleeper, oppressive figure, darkness, distorted dream atmosphere, and looming presence all reflected fears connected to sleep paralysis experiences across cultures. Even people unfamiliar with the science often recognize the emotional reality captured by the painting immediately. As neuroscience developed, the meaning of these artworks gradually shifted. What once appeared purely supernatural began revealing connections to ordinary human sleep physiology. The demons and spirits portrayed in older artwork could now be understood partly as visual representations of REM overlap, heightened fear, and dream imagery entering awareness. Yet scientific explanation did not erase the artistic power of the imagery. In many ways, the science made the artwork even more fascinating because it showed how accurately human beings had been depicting the emotional experience of sleep paralysis for centuries without fully understanding the biology behind it. Artists captured the terror first. Neuroscience later explained the mechanism. Sleep paralysis exists at a fascinating crossroads between ancient folklore and modern neuroscience. Few human experiences connect mythology and biology so directly across history. For thousands of years, people interpreted these nighttime episodes through stories of spirits, demons, ghosts, witches, ancestors, or supernatural visitors because the sensations felt too emotionally powerful and physically convincing to dismiss as ordinary dreams. Modern science later revealed that beneath those stories lay overlapping sleep systems, REM paralysis, dream intrusion, and the extraordinary complexity of the human brain. What makes this connection so remarkable is that both perspectives preserve different kinds of truth about the experience. Folklore captured the emotional reality of sleep paralysis long before neuroscience understood the biological mechanisms involved. Ancient people may not have known about REM sleep or neurological transitions, yet they understood the terror, helplessness, present sensations, and nighttime dread that often accompany episodes. Their stories reflected genuine human experiences, even when the explanations themselves were supernatural. Modern neuroscience approached the phenomenon differently. Scientists studied brain waves, REM sleep cycles, muscle inhibition, dream generation, and emotional processing to uncover how these strange experiences emerge during transitions between sleeping and waking consciousness. Instead of demons sitting upon the chest, researchers discovered REM atonia combined with heightened fear and breathing awareness. Instead of ghosts entering the room, scientists identified dream imagery and present sensations overlapping with awareness. A useful analogy might involve ancient sailors navigating by stars long before astronomy fully explained what stars actually were. Their understanding of the sky differed greatly from modern science, yet the observations themselves remained real and meaningful. Sleep paralysis followed a similar path through human history. The experience was always genuine, even while the explanation evolved over time. This helps explain why sleep paralysis stories appear so consistently across civilizations separated by oceans, languages, and centuries. Human beings everywhere possess similar neurological systems capable of producing REM overlap under certain conditions. The emotional details may shift according to culture, though the underlying biological systems remain deeply shared across humanity. In one region, a sleeper may interpret the sensed presence as a spirit ancestor. In another, the same experience becomes linked with demons, witches, or shadow beings. In modern times, some interpret episodes through ideas involving extraterrestrials or paranormal visitation. The symbols change because culture shapes how people explain uncertainty. The emotional pattern of the experience, however, often remains similar. A useful comparison might involve human beings across the world independently creating myths about storms, darkness, or floods. Different cultures produce different stories, though the emotional experiences behind those stories came from shared human encounters with powerful natural forces. Sleep paralysis inspired similar storytelling because the experience itself feels deeply real and emotionally overwhelming from the inside. At the same time, folklore reminds scientists that emotional experience matters just as much as biological mechanism. Sleep paralysis is not merely an interesting neurological glitch. For the sleeper experiencing it, the fear can feel immediate and overwhelming. Ancient stories preserved that emotional truth long before brain imaging technology existed. Mythology often reflects attempts to give shape and meaning to experiences that feel too powerful to ignore. Researchers studying consciousness became increasingly interested in how storytelling itself interacts with sleep paralysis. Cultural expectations may influence what people perceive during episodes. Someone raised hearing stories about spirits may interpret uncertainty differently than someone raised with scientific explanations about REM overlap. The brain builds experience partly through expectation, memory, fear, and symbolic meaning. A useful analogy might involve language shaping how people describe emotions. Human beings everywhere experience sadness, fear, joy, and grief, though different cultures organize and express those feelings through different words and symbols. Sleep paralysis appears to function similarly. The biological core remains shared while culture shapes the narrative surrounding the event. Modern neuroscience transformed sleep paralysis into a valuable scientific window into consciousness itself. Researchers now study these episodes to better understand REM sleep, dream generation, emotional regulation, body awareness, and the fragile transitions between waking and sleeping states. The experience reveals that consciousness is not fixed or simple, but layered, flexible, and capable of existing in overlapping conditions. One of the strangest aspects of sleep paralysis is how distorted time can feel during an episode. Many people later describe the experience as lasting several minutes, or even much longer. Though laboratory observations suggest many episodes are actually relatively brief, fear changes the perception of time dramatically. Moments filled with panic, uncertainty, and intense emotional focus often feel stretched and expanded far beyond their actual duration. This distortion happens because the brain pays unusually close attention during threatening experiences. Under ordinary conditions, time often passes without conscious awareness. During fear, however, attention narrows sharply around every sensation, thought, and sound. The mind becomes hyper-focused on breathing, immobility, darkness, and possible danger. Each second feels emotionally enlarged because the nervous system treats the situation as highly important. A useful analogy might involve narrowly avoiding a car accident and later remembering the moment as unfolding in slow motion. During highly emotional events, the brain records far more detail than usual, creating the impression that time itself expanded. Sleep paralysis appears to trigger similar effects because fear systems remain strongly activated while the sleeper feels trapped and unable to move. Breathing awareness contributes heavily to this feeling of stretched time. During episodes, many people become intensely focused on the rhythm of their breathing because chest sensations feel unusual and movement remains restricted. The more attention locks onto breathing, the more emotionally significant each breath may seem. Panic can then increase breathing rate slightly, which further amplifies awareness of the chest and body. This creates a feedback loop between fear and bodily sensation. The sleeper notices unusual breathing. Fear increases. Attention becomes even more focused on the chest. Breathing begins feeling more difficult or restricted emotionally, even though oxygen flow remains normal. The experience then feels increasingly urgent and prolonged because the brain interprets the situation as threatening. Researchers emphasize that breathing during sleep paralysis continues functioning normally despite how alarming the sensations may feel. REM sleep naturally changes breathing rhythm somewhat, and awareness of these unfamiliar patterns can become amplified during episodes. Understanding this mechanism often helps reduce panic because the sensation becomes easier to interpret calmly. A useful comparison might involve becoming suddenly aware of swallowing or blinking after thinking about those actions consciously. Ordinary automatic body functions can feel strange once intense attention focuses on them directly. Sleep paralysis magnifies this effect dramatically because fear and REM overlap, amplify bodily awareness during the episode. Scientists studying memory noticed that sleep paralysis often remains vividly remembered because intense experiences receive stronger encoding inside the brain. Fear tells the nervous system that the event matters and should be remembered carefully. Even brief episodes may therefore remain unusually sharp in memory compared with ordinary dreams, which often fade rapidly after waking. The emotional realism of the environment strengthens this memory further. During sleep paralysis, the sleeper usually remains aware of the actual bedroom while the episode unfolds. Unlike ordinary dreams disconnected from waking surroundings, sleep paralysis occurs partly within recognizable reality. The bed, ceiling, doorway, and darkness all appear familiar, making the experience feel anchored to the real world rather than distant dream imagery. Researchers also discovered that people who experience repeated episodes sometimes begin recognizing early warning signs before paralysis fully develops. Certain sensations of heaviness, unusual vibration, dreamlike awareness, or unstable waking transitions may become familiar over time. Recognizing these patterns occasionally helps sleepers remain calmer because the episode no longer feels completely unknown. Sleep regularity appears to reduce episodes in many people. maintaining consistent sleep schedules, reducing severe sleep deprivation, managing stress, and improving sleep quality may help stabilize REM transitions and lower the likelihood of overlap between awareness and paralysis. Although episodes can still occur unexpectedly, healthier sleep architecture often reduces the instability connected with disrupted REM timing. A useful analogy might involve maintaining balance while walking across uneven ground. When rested and steady, movement remains smooth and coordinated. Under exhaustion or instability, missteps become more likely. Sleep systems behave similarly. Consistent sleep patterns help the brain transition more smoothly between stages, while severe disruption increases the chances of unusual overlap states emerging. Recovery after an episode often happens quickly once movement returns fully. The sleeper may suddenly regain control of the body, sit upright, turn on lights, or check the room around them for reassurance. Even after the paralysis ends, however, emotional tension may linger because the experience felt so vivid and convincing during the episode itself. Some people remain awake afterward because fear makes returning to sleep difficult. Others eventually drift back into ordinary rest once the nervous system calms again. In many cases, the emotional intensity fades gradually over time, while curiosity about the experience begins replacing immediate panic. People often search for explanations afterward because the event feels too unusual to ignore completely. One of the questions researchers continue exploring is why some people experience sleep paralysis only once, while others encounter it repeatedly throughout life. Two people may live under similar conditions, experience similar stress levels, and follow similar sleep schedules, yet one may never experience paralysis at all, while the other becomes highly prone to episodes during periods of exhaustion or disrupted sleep. This difference suggests that the brain's transition systems may vary naturally from person to person. Scientists believe genetics may play at least a partial role in this sensitivity. Studies involving families and twins suggest certain people may inherit sleep patterns or REM regulation systems that make overlap states slightly more likely under particular conditions. The sleeping brain depends upon precise timing between awareness, muscle inhibition, emotional regulation, and dream generation. Small differences in how these systems coordinate may influence how easily REM overlap occurs. This does not mean sleep paralysis represents illness or damage. In many cases, it may simply reflect variation in how different human brains move through sleep transitions. Some people appear to have especially vivid REM sleep, stronger dream recall, lighter sleep architecture, or more flexible boundaries between waking and dreaming awareness. These differences may increase the likelihood of conscious awareness emerging before REM paralysis fully fades. A useful analogy might involve people naturally having different sensitivity to motion while traveling. Some individuals can read comfortably in moving vehicles, while others become dizzy very quickly under the same conditions. The underlying systems remain normal in both people, though sensitivity differs from one nervous system to another. Sleep paralysis may work similarly through variation in neurological timing and REM stability. Researchers also noticed interesting links between sleep paralysis and other unusual sleep experiences. People prone to vivid dreaming, lucid dreaming, false awakenings, or certain forms of disrupted REM sleep sometimes report sleep paralysis more often as well. This connection reinforced the idea that these experiences all emerge from related mechanisms involving blurred boundaries between sleeping and waking consciousness. False awakenings became especially interesting to scientists studying overlapping sleep states. During a false awakening, a person dreams about waking up while still remaining asleep. The bedroom may appear perfectly realistic, while ordinary morning routines seem to unfold normally inside the dream. Eventually, the sleeper realizes they never truly woke up at all. Sleep paralysis shares similarities because both experiences involve unstable boundaries between REM dreaming and awareness. The more researchers explored these states, the more they recognized that consciousness itself may not function through sharply separated categories. Human awareness can become layered and overlapping under certain neurological conditions. A person may be partly awake while still carrying dream imagery. Emotional systems may remain inside REM activation, while logical awareness begins returning. Body paralysis may continue briefly, while visual awareness of the room already feels fully conscious. Some individuals appear especially sensitive to these transitional states. Researchers studying highly vivid dreamers found that certain people naturally recall dreams more easily and report greater awareness of internal mental imagery during sleep. Others move through sleep with little memory of dreaming at all. These differences suggest the boundaries between conscious awareness and dreaming vary significantly across individuals. Stress and exhaustion may then push already sensitive systems toward instability more easily. A person with naturally vivid REM sleep who becomes sleep-deprived and emotionally stressed may therefore become more vulnerable to episodes than someone whose sleep architecture remains heavier and less dream-focused. Sleep paralysis often emerges through interaction between biological sensitivity and environmental disruption rather than one single cause alone. Scientists also became fascinated by how the brain maintains ordinary stable consciousness most of the time, despite the enormous complexity involved. Every night, billions of neurons coordinate shifting states of awareness, paralysis, dreaming, breathing regulation, memory processing, and sensory filtering with remarkable precision. Sleep paralysis reveals what can happen when those systems briefly overlap before fully separating again. Importantly, researchers emphasize that sleep paralysis itself remains relatively common and generally harmless, despite how frightening it can feel. The episodes naturally end once waking systems stabilize fully and REM atonia fades. Understanding this often helps reduce fear because the experience becomes easier to interpret as a temporary neurological overlap rather than external threat or loss of sanity. Most of these transitions remain hidden beneath ordinary experience. People fall asleep, dream, wake, and continue life without ever witnessing the delicate neurological coordination making those transitions possible. Occasionally, however, consciousness arrives slightly too early, while pieces of REM sleep still remain active. For a few unforgettable moments, the sleeper glimpses the blurred border between dreaming and waking, where the brain's hidden transition systems become briefly visible from the inside. For most of human history, people imagined sleep as a simple disappearance of consciousness. A person closed their eyes, awareness faded into darkness, and several hours later the mind returned again in the morning. modern neuroscience revealed something far more layered and mysterious unfolding beneath ordinary human sleep each night. Consciousness does not vanish completely during sleep. Instead, it shifts continuously through changing states of awareness, memory, emotion, sensation, and dream activity, moving across the brain in organized patterns. Sleep paralysis became one of the clearest examples of this hidden complexity because it briefly exposes the borderlands between these states. The experience reveals that waking and dreaming are not perfectly sealed worlds separated by an instant transition. Under certain conditions, they can overlap. Awareness may partially return, while REM paralysis still lingers. Dream imagery may continue operating, while the bedroom itself becomes visible again. Emotional systems may remain deeply activated, while logical orientation struggles to stabilize fully. A useful analogy might involve standing in heavy coastal fog, where ocean and shoreline gradually blend together. The boundary still exists, though it becomes difficult to identify exactly where one world ends and the other begins. Sleep paralysis reveals similar fog between dreaming and waking states, where ordinary categories temporarily lose their sharp edges. Researchers studying consciousness became increasingly fascinated by these overlap states because they challenged older assumptions about how the mind operates. Human awareness appeared less like a simple light switch and more like a layered landscape containing multiple systems capable of blending together under certain neurological conditions. The sleeping brain could remain emotionally active while physical movement stayed inhibited. Dream imagery could continue while environmental awareness returned. Memory, perception, fear, and body awareness could all recover at different speeds. This realization transformed sleep itself into one of the most important frontiers in neuroscience. Sleep no longer appeared passive or empty. Instead, it became understood as an enormously active biological process involving emotional regulation, memory organization, hormonal coordination, sensory filtering, dream construction, and changing neurological rhythms unfolding continuously throughout the night. A useful comparison might involve a massive city viewed from high above after midnight. At first glance, the city may appear quiet and still. Closer observation reveals transportation systems moving beneath the streets, lights shifting across buildings, maintenance crews working through darkness, communication networks exchanging signals, and countless invisible systems continuing to operate while most people sleep. The brain behaves similarly each night through hidden activity unfolding beneath ordinary awareness. Sleep paralysis briefly allows consciousness to witness some of those hidden systems before the transition fully stabilizes again. The sleeper becomes aware while the architecture of REM sleep still remains partly active around them. This creates the strange feeling of existing between worlds, where reality itself seems unstable and dreamlike, despite the room remaining physically unchanged. The experience also raises deeper questions about how the brain constructs reality itself. Human beings often assume perception works like a camera, recording the external world directly. Neuroscience suggests something much more complicated. The brain actively builds conscious experience from sensory input, memory, expectation, emotion, body mapping, and interpretation all at once. During sleep paralysis, these construction systems briefly overlap in unusual ways, producing sensations that feel vividly real, despite emerging internally. A useful analogy might involve an orchestra, where every section normally performs in precise synchronization. The audience hears one unified piece of music because countless separate instruments remain coordinated together. Sleep paralysis may occur when some sections continue playing briefly, while others have already shifted into a new movement. The result feels strange, precisely because ordinary harmony has temporarily loosened. Researchers studying dream consciousness notice that sleep paralysis shares qualities with several other unusual threshold states. Lucid dreaming, false awakenings, hypnagogic imagery, and vivid dream recall all suggest the boundaries between consciousness states remain more flexible than most people realize. Human awareness may drift gradually across multiple layers rather than moving instantly between fixed categories. This flexibility may partly explain why sleep paralysis inspired so much mythology across history. It feels significant because it exposes hidden instability beneath ordinary assumptions about consciousness and control. A person awakens expecting the familiar certainty of waking life, only to discover dream logic, paralysis, emotional intensity, and awareness all existing together at once. Even modern scientific understanding does not entirely remove the mystery from the experience. Neuroscience can explain REM overlap, emotional activation, and dream intrusion. Yet the experience still feels astonishing from the inside because consciousness rarely witnesses its own transitions so directly. Sleep paralysis offers a brief glimpse into processes usually hidden beneath ordinary awareness. For thousands of years, human beings looked into the darkness of sleep paralysis and saw something supernatural staring back at them. The experience felt too vivid, too convincing, and too physically real to explain easily through ordinary waking logic. A person opened their eyes, recognized the bedroom, felt unable to move, sensed a presence nearby, and carried the memory afterward with unusual clarity. Across centuries, cultures filled that mystery with demons, spirits, witches, ghosts, shadow beings, and nighttime visitors, because no better explanation yet existed. Modern neuroscience gradually transformed that mystery into something different, though perhaps no less remarkable. Scientists studying REM sleep discovered that the sleeping brain contains systems capable of generating vivid dream worlds while temporarily immobilizing the body for protection. Sleep paralysis emerged not as evidence of supernatural attack, but as a rare overlap where awareness returns before the dreaming systems fully release their hold. This scientific explanation changed how people understood the experience, though it did not erase the emotional intensity from inside the moment itself. Sleep paralysis still feels strange because it exposes hidden processes most human beings never consciously witness. The sleeper briefly awakens while parts of the dreaming brain still remain active, creating a state where fear, dream imagery, body paralysis, and awareness all overlap together within the same fragile moment. A useful analogy might involve waking backstage during a theater performance and accidentally seeing the machinery responsible for creating the illusion. Audiences normally experience only the finished performance, while the hidden systems remain invisible behind curtains and walls. Sleep paralysis briefly reveals some of the hidden neurological machinery shaping dreams, consciousness, and ordinary human sleep every night. Dreaming itself remains one of the great mysteries of human biology. Every night, The brain creates entire worlds filled with movement, emotion, memory, imagination, conversation, landscapes, and sensation, while the body rests quietly in darkness. Most dreams fade softly into morning without interruption. Sleep paralysis becomes unusual because fragments of those dream systems linger briefly into awareness instead of dissolving completely before consciousness returns. Researchers studying sleep increasingly recognized that waking and sleeping are not perfectly separated conditions. The brain moves gradually through layered neurological states involving changing chemistry, shifting emotional systems, memory processing, sensory filtering, and REM transitions, unfolding continuously throughout the night. Sleep paralysis reveals that these boundaries can occasionally blur, allowing consciousness to briefly experience overlapping systems, usually hidden from awareness. This realization also changed how scientists viewed folklore itself. Ancient stories about shadow figures and nighttime presences were no longer dismissed simply as superstition. Instead, researchers began understanding them as cultural interpretations of genuine human experiences rooted in ordinary sleep biology. Mythology preserved the emotional truth of sleep paralysis long before neuroscience identified REM atonia and dream intrusion. A useful comparison might involve ancient civilizations creating stories about eclipses before astronomy explained planetary motion. The scientific explanation eventually changed humanity's understanding of eclipses, though the experience itself remained real and emotionally powerful throughout history. Sleep paralysis followed a similar path from mythology toward neuroscience, while preserving the same underlying human experience across generations. The universality of these episodes reveals something deeply shared about human consciousness. Different cultures may describe sleep paralysis differently, though the underlying neurological systems remain similar across humanity. Fear, paralysis, sensed presence, dream imagery, and unstable awareness emerge repeatedly because human brains share common biological architecture capable of producing these overlap states under certain conditions. Scientists continue studying sleep paralysis because it offers a rare glimpse into how consciousness itself is constructed. The experience reveals that awareness depends upon delicate coordination between emotional systems, sensory integration, body awareness, memory processing, and REM sleep mechanisms operating together continuously beneath ordinary waking life. When those systems overlap unexpectedly, perception itself can become dreamlike and unstable, despite the sleeper remaining physically safe. A useful analogy might involve watching two rivers merge together temporarily before separating again farther downstream. During sleep paralysis, dreaming and waking states briefly flow together inside the same moment before ordinary awareness fully stabilizes once more. The sleeper experiences not one state or the other, but a fragile mixture of both at once. For many people, understanding the science behind sleep paralysis transforms fear into curiosity. The experience may still feel intense and unforgettable, though it becomes easier to interpret calmly once its connection to REM, sleep, and dream overlap becomes clear. What once seemed like evidence of external threat instead reveals the remarkable flexibility of the sleeping human brain. Sleep paralysis reminds us that ordinary sleep is far more mysterious than it first appears. Beneath every quiet bedroom lies an active neurological world filled with shifting awareness, dreaming, memory, emotion, and hidden transitions unfolding hour after hour through the night. Most of the time, these systems remain invisible beneath consciousness. Rarely, the border opens briefly, and the dreaming brain reveals itself before morning fully arrives. Thank you for listening to the Sleepy Mind channel. I hope you enjoyed learning about the strange science, history, and hidden psychology of sleep paralysis.